blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome to episode 75. That's 3/4 of a 100. Are we going to make it? I don't know. All right, so how's everyone doing? Let's see. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm John Linville, and I'm joined here with my co-host. Let's see, we've got Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, John.
And then we got Mike Rowan. Hello, Mike.
Hello, everybody.
And Mr. Boise Pete. Hello, Boise.
Good evening, everyone.
All right, back for another month of exciting CoCo entertainment, or at least CoCo entertainment. All right, let's see. What are we doing? Let's see. Time marches on. Tandy Assembly. It's just about a month away. Very exciting.
Ooh.
I'm hoping for a good group. I'd like to say a big crowd. I'm not sure we're going to get that, but hopefully whatever we get is going to be good. I'm sure we'll have fun and enjoy each other's company and enjoy all the Tandy hardware and stuff. It'll be fun there. Let's see, 2 months away, we've got CoCo Fest. CoCo Fest have been delayed and almost made it, was almost going to have it in the spring and then didn't. And I don't know why we didn't consider June. That would have been a good time this year, but I guess it's benefit of hindsight now. Anyway, it's supposed to happen in November, so that'll be exciting. Yeah, so what do you think? What are you guys doing anything fun? Making preparations for these upcoming events?
I need to get my airline tickets for
Oh,
Tandy Assembly. That's coming up very soon.
yeah. Need to make some reservations too, I think.
Same here.
Any CoCo stuff? I actually have been putting together a few carts of packages. Put together some for Xmas Rush. It's something that lots of people want one at different times. Not always, it's not always a rush, but sometimes it's one that pops back up. People say, "Hey, I'd still like to get that." Follow CoCo as well. I'm planning to put some more in, but had a little manufacturing mishap. But I think that'll still happen. How about you, Neil? You got any big woodworking projects going?
No woodworking. I've switched over to a GMC project. I'm going to be releasing a new game soon.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm
That's right.
a few steps
Cool.
closer.
Cool. We're
Very exciting.
excited to
Looking
hear it.
forward to that. How about any acquisitions? Anybody bought anything recently?
I haven't bought anything recently, but I've been dusting off my MC10, going to work with that in conjunction with my Raspberry Pi print solution. So
Oh, that should be
that's
cool.
the paces. Yeah.
I came close this past weekend at the Vintage Computing Festival Southeast in Atlanta to pick up an LSI Terminal 3A.
Oh, yeah?
3A, yeah. I didn't get it. I really didn't have any way to slug it back with me on the plane, but one of those early, I think, mid-70s terminals that it almost looks like one of the original Blue Bondi iMacs. It has that same shape.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike, you saw it. Mike was there with me. It was on the not on the consignment table, but on one of the other tables there near the corner.
Okay, yeah.
With some stuff for sale, but I didn't get it, so I guess I didn't acquire it, but I came close.
Cool. Yeah, I picked up a couple of microcontroller PCBs to mess with. Haven't done anything with them, but they're 68HC11, so not entirely unrelated to CoCo stuff. And then this past week, I bought one of those piano keyboards that are a mat that lays out on the floor, so you can play it with your feet.
Cool.
And it just came in. It seems to work. The idea is to pair into it, see if I can use it as an input device and then wherever that my imagination takes me from there, we'll see. But I thought it'd be fun to see a bunch of CoCo people trying to play piano with their feet at a CoCo Fest, don't you think?
Yeah,
is
that'd
it
be
like
cool.
one of those mats that you had when you were in kindergarten that you could sleep on?
Well, I guess you could sleep on it, but it's not really for that. No.
Might wake you up if you play a medley while you're taking a nap. Right?
Well, anyway, that's probably enough to get us started. Why don't we take a little break, and then we'll be back with some announcements.
After more than a year of lockdowns, it's time to start anew. It's time to rejuvenate. It's time to assemble. Tandy Assembly is go for 2021. Whether you're a fan of the TRS-80 Model 1 or the Tandy 3000, the MC-10 or the Model 16. If you're a fan of Tandy and Radio Shack computers, Tandy Assembly is a place for you. It's time to learn. It's time to share. It's time to assemble in Springfield, Ohio on October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Visit tandyassembly.com for details and hotel reservations. It's time for discovery. It's time for fun. It's time for Tandy Assembly.
All right, CoCo Cruisers and CoCo Maniacs. Welcome back. Now it's time for some announcements. You are listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. We are, of course, available on Twitter with the Twitter handle of @CoCo Crew Podcast. That's @CoCoCrew_PODCAST. So if you'd like to send tweets, feel free to tweet at us, and we may tweet back. We are, of course, also available with a group on Facebook called the CoCo Crew Podcast. That's 4 separate words. So come and join the fun. Maybe get some early insight on news and events and that sort of thing, or just enjoy some banter with the CoCo Crew hosts and anyone else that wants to talk. Good time will be had by all. The CoCo Crew Podcast, of course, is a podcast. So we are available with Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Both of those are for normal podcast downloading. And, of course, that's in addition to the RSS feed at CoCoCrew.org, of course. If you prefer to stream your audio content, then we are available through Spotify, on Stitcher, and TuneIn. And if that doesn't cover you, please let us know what are you using for your listening pleasure, and we'll see if we can get listed there. All right. Speaking of where else we're available, we have been taking our audio episodes for some time and converting them into video spots, uploading them to YouTube. This is useful in particular if you're someone who either has trouble with our accents or maybe someone for whom English is not a first language. You can check out the YouTube version. They have a pretty good subtitle facility. And that may help if you have a little trouble interpreting what we're saying. You usually get about a dozen views each month. Not overwhelming, but it's a resource. Feel free to take advantage of it. We are a member of the Throwback Network. This is a list of retro-themed podcasts centered mostly around 80s culture and some older technology stuff. There's old computer podcasts and old TV shows and all kinds of old stuff. If you're an 80s nerd and you are caught up on the CoCo Crew Podcast, then we recommend that you check out the Throwback Network. Also, we are listed on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. This is also a list of retro-themed podcasts. In this case, it's limited to 80s computers and video games, so it's maybe not 80s, it's 90s as well, I think, 70s. Anyway, retro computer technology. And again, if you are caught up with the CoCo Crew Podcast and looking for something else to listen to, we recommend you check out the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. The audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. If you have a need to host audio on the internet, whether it be for your own podcast or perhaps your social club or church or school or anything else that you might have that you need hosted on the internet, you should check out Cyber Ears, where you will get your audio on your terms. If you want to reach out to the host of the CoCo Crew Podcast, we have some email addresses set up. First three will reach all of the hosts. This is for general questions or suggestions or feedback or whatever else you got. So we've got the show, SHOW, at CoCoCrew.org. That's CoCoCrew.org. Also have podcast, PODCAST, at CoCoCrew.org. And feedback, FEEDBACK, at CoCoCrew.org. If for some reason you only want to talk to one of the hosts, then we have individual emails set up as well. And so I'm available as John, JOHN, CoCoCrew.org. Neil is available as Neil, NEIL, at CoCoCrew.org. Mike is available as Mike, MIKE, at CoCoCrew.org. And Boise is available as Boise, BOISY, at CoCoCrew.org. So feel free to reach out and touch someone. I don't know if that's an appropriate slogan anymore, but if you want to send some email, send it to us. We'll be happy to get it. Let's see, we've got some announcements of events coming up in real life, IRL as the kids say. We've got the Vintage Computer Festival Midwest number 16 scheduled for September 11th and 12th of 2021. This will be held at Waterford Banquets in Elmhurst, Illinois. By order of DuPage County and our host venue, masks will be required at VCF Midwest this year. So just so you know. Should be a good event. Lots of old computers, good group of people involved in organizing it. If you are in the Chicago area, then you should try to check out VCF Midwest 16 coming up September 11th and 12th. All right. Here we go. The big one. Drum roll, please. October 1st through the 3rd, Canadian Assembly 2021 in Springfield, Ohio. This is our big event. Definitely a place to come. See CoCo stuff, see Z80-based Tandy stuff, see other Tandy stuff, Tandy 1000, Pocket Computer, Model 100, whatever you got. Come and check it out. It's a nice little town. Come and be part of the group. Hang out with us. Tell some jokes. Just generally be social. Seems like a good idea.
Definitely.
So come on out. Make this a big event. The following week, October 8th through the 10th, weekend, I should say, VCF East 2021. For this year, themes for the show are IBM 5150 PC and its legacy, and then number 2, text adventures. So, sounds like a cool group of stuff. Let's see, they got speakers, Bill Minch, Scott Adams, Michael Tomczyk, Stephanie Allaire. If you are in the northeast part of the United States, kind of the New York area, this will, of course, be held in Wall, New Jersey at the InfoAge Science Center. It's a nice facility with some history of its own. If you're up there and looking for something, I definitely recommend it. It's always been a good event when we have attended, and probably even when we haven't attended. All right, moving on. The Midwest Gaming Classic, November 5th through the 7th of 2021, will be held at the Wisconsin Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Looks like a big event. Let's see, what is it? Midwest Gaming Classic is a trade show featuring 150,000 plus square feet of retro and modern home video game consoles, pinball machines, arcade video games, tabletop RPGs, computers, tabletop board games, crane games, collectible card games, air hockey, and that's just the start. Sounds like a cool event. I know Ron Klein always spoke well of it. If you were in that north part of the northern Midwest area in November, if you can break out of the ice, then I recommend you check out the Midwest Gaming Classic. With a possible exception, it is a scheduling overlap. November 6th and 7th, so that same weekend, we've got the last Chicago CoCo Fest, which will be held at Holiday Inn, Elk Grove Village, Illinois. So this is the event put on by Glenside Color Computer Club, the granddaddy event of the CoCo community. Could be a good event. If you are in the Chicago area in November, then we recommend that you check out the 29th Chicago CoCo Fest. Okay, so we got a little kind of a pre-announcement here. So VCF East 2022, so this is next year, scheduled. The dates are April 29th and 30th and May 1st. So if you're going to be in Wall, New Jersey, you want to start planning early for next spring, you may want to consider heading out to New Jersey for VCF East 2022, April 29th and 30th and May 1st, 2022. And then in that same line, got tentative dates announced. Well, what will be, the 30th last Chicago CoCo Fest. Tentatively scheduled for May 14th and 15th of 2022. So put it on your calendar, get ready. Hopefully by then, some of the elements will have been worked out. Maybe we'll be back to where we were early summer, if nothing else. Let's hope. All right, well, that's the end of our list of events. Why don't we take another little break, and then we'll be back with some news.
Remember when we used to play computer games with cheap plastic joysticks? Our fingers would ache for days.
Put the past behind you. Introducing the Gamester. The Gamester is the ultimate 2-button joystick controller for your color computer, Dragon, and Tandy 1000. The Gamester features a genuine arcade-quality joystick with 2 large arcade-quality cherry switch buttons on a single surface. Best of all, the hardware is mounted in a sturdy wooden cabinet. It sits comfortably on your lap or on your desk. Experience the difference that super high-quality, heavy-duty components make in your gameplay. No more finger fatigue. Responsive button switches. Sturdy components that can take the punishment of even the most enthusiastic player. Every Gamester is built to order. Choose the wood for your cabinet. Choose custom paint or stain and finishes. Select the cable length for your Gamester. Choose a left-handed configuration, or add adapters for your Dragon computer. The Gamester is designed to last a lifetime. To build yours, simply reach out to Neil Blanchard by email. Neil@CoCoCrew.org. That's NEIL@CoCoCrew.org. Experience genuine arcade controller action for all of your favorite color computer, Dragon, and Tandy 1000 computer games. For true arcade action, it's the Gamester.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back to our news segment, and where we try to share with you some recent news and events in the particularly the general retro computing world as well. Hoping to give you some ideas for your own projects or what's possible, or just something to do to entertain yourself on a Saturday afternoon, whatever we can find. So let's see. We're going to start off this month. We've got, shockingly, a new game released from Mr. Jim Gary. I think it's pronounced I Ching.
Yes.
The game translated from French, the Sinclair ZX81 Basic to Microcolor Basic for the TRS-80 MC10. I don't know a lot about this game. It looks like it's offering some Chinese symbols for you to learn. And
this is really popular in the early days. You know, you would find this in a lot of the, the basic code books that you would get. And so the original I Ching, you would cast lots to find which symbol, So this just kind of replaces that with the random number generator in your computer.
Yeah, the name sounded familiar. I don't think I ever played it. So sorry for being a little unfamiliar. But anyway, like so many of Jim's offerings, it looks like a good way to entertain yourself and maybe kill a little time with your MC10. Well, what more can you say? It seems like a cool thing to do, huh? So once again, thank you, Mr. Jim Gary. All right, moving on. So this is kind of a weird one. This is not a CoCo. This is a Commodore 64 hardware, except it's not quite a Commodore 64 either. It's a video demo. Starts out with a Commodore 64. Then he makes up a cable and plugs it into the 1541 disk drive attached to the Commodore 64. you may or may not know the 1541 disk drive has a 6502 processor in it, and could rightfully be called a computer on its own. And that's basically what he does, is he uploads a program to that, and then disconnects or turns off the Commodore 64 itself, while the disk drive does a demo program, as they say, with the graphics and sound provided by beating the disk heads back and forth. And the graphics is black and white, but still pretty impressive. I don't know. This would inspire you, hopefully. Take a look, see what the Commodore 64 people are doing when they get bored.
It's pretty cool, but I would comment that while it's great at doing this, it's still really slow at loading data into a Commodore 64.
It is a shame how slow they are at loading this code off the disk, and there are ways to speed that up. But the disk drive itself is apparently a remarkably capable computer, depending on what task you want to give it. Loading code from disk maybe not be the best.
Yeah, this is a better use of it. Yeah, it's a cool video though. Pretty amazing to see a disk
very
drive
impressive.
doing all of
Good
that.
work there. It's Matthias Kram. Very good work.
I could picture
right.
Simon Jonason doing something like this on the CoCo.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what would be. We don't have a cassette drive with a CPU in it.
Yeah.
Maybe. But anyway, pretty cool. Worth talking about. All right, moving on. So the story was published on Adafruit, but the real story, the original source for the 1981 masterpiece Defender is now on GitHub. So GitHub, of course, is a public repository for various types of source code. There's all kinds of projects up there, one of which is called the Historical Source Project, and they have a number of source offerings there. But in particular, one of them is Defender for the Williams arcade game Defender, which of course was a 6809 processor. So it could be of some interest if you want to figure out how some of those tricks were done. You may want to check it out. Now, keep in mind the video on Williams arcade games is laid out quite a bit differently from any of the CoCo machines. That's downright odd, the way they place the bytes in memory, but either way, it could be informative, so check it out. And if you happen to, want to port a Williams arcade game to the CoCo, who would ever want to do that? This might give you a head start. So, worth checking out. Definitely cool. So here we've got an announcement or demonstration from over on Atari Age from Mr. Dave. I don't know Mr. Dave. I know he's been in the community a little while now, but don't really know much about him. But here he's demonstrating loading up some graphics on the CoCo 3 in a higher res video mode, and then scrolling around using some hardware scrolling or whatever. I think the program is actually, it's scrolling from basic. So he's got a basic program that will load the graphics and then use the hardware registers to do some scrolling. So pretty neat. It's kind of a nice exercise and a good skill to master if you want to write a game or something for the CoCo. I don't think there's much instruction in this posting, but at least you know who to ask if you want more information. Pretty cool. Thank you, Mr. Dave. Mr. Dave, maybe you could let me know your real name so I could credit you properly in the future. Got a video from someone that's called Dragon Data Archive on YouTube. Don't know who the person is behind that, but it says keyboard switch replacement the easy way on the Dragon 64. And so he goes through and he has a video going through showing how to disassemble the Dragon and get the keyboard out and expose the circuit board and figure out when you've got a couple of bad key switches. He shows you how to extract the keycaps and then locate the place to desolder the switches on the back of the PCB and then pop a couple of new switches in and solder them and replace the keycaps. It's not real deep, but it's a good demonstration of how to do something that I imagine a lot of people have had to do at one time or another, or might have to do in the future. Very cool and nice to share. Thank you. Dragon Data Archive.
All right, my first news article here in my block is from Jim Gary. It's titled Chevy Tech for TRS-80 MC10. So this isn't quite a game, but it's a nice VDG graphic of the Chevy logo. See, load your Chevrolet. So, that's pretty cool. Something a little different for him.
A bow tie on your MC10, yeah?
Yeah. Next news article is from Donald Papp at Hackaday. Faulty electrolytic caps don't always look bad. This is a great article because I've actually learned this myself repairing LCD monitors. They don't always, bulge or leak if they're bad. I did find that out the hard way once, but very good article here.
Yeah, I've had trouble identifying bad caps quite often. Like you say, the description is always, they're all bulged and look terrible, and sometimes they ooze or whatever. But like you said, there's plenty of them that are at least a little bit flat to the touch. It's not always easy to know if ones have failed.
That's true. The trick is trying to find a service manual for whatever you're trying to repair. If you have a service manual, that really helps a lot. All right, next news article is from Andrew Ayers. A 3D space shuttle for the CoCo 1, 2, and 3. It looks like it works, and I see Ron Delvaux has tested it on a CoCo 3 with 2 meg, the 6309, and it is working now. That's a neat 3D graphic of a space shuttle.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Good work, Andrew. All right, next news article is from Andrew Lazewski at Gizmodo. You can now revisit the most popular desktop publishing app of the 80s in your web browser. I'm sure you can guess what that is.
This is cool. This is really cool.
It is cool. You can now run the Print Shop. So the original one from Broderbund Software in 1984.
Yeah, and it's actually running an Apple II emulator
there. That's pretty cool. We were just not too long ago. We were amongst ourselves. We were talking about the CoCo graphics package from Zebra Systems. That was very similar to this, and this popped up. So pretty cool. All
right, Brendan Donahue. CoCo VGA 64-column text mode on the MC10. Anyone? There's a question mark. So it looks like they got this working, or Brendan's got this going here, whereas CoCo VGA is working on the MC10.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a plug in that one.
You did.
I saw that.
Yeah.
It's I for Xmas Rush, I kind of developed or pioneered or whatever the technique to use some human interaction to help synchronize. Use the timer that's on the Z3, and then be able to synchronize to the screen updates, which I guess is something that you need to be able to do to set the extra modes on the CoCo VGA. So,
cool.
Pretty cool. Good to see somebody put that technique to use and credit it very well. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Looks beautiful. Our next one is from Mr. Jim Gary, Space Taxi. Here's another MC10 game. Looks pretty cool. Looks like it draws skylines, and you're basically on a taxi flying over the city and or the planet. I'm not sure which it is, being space taxi, but you basically have to avoid the obstacles in your way and make it from one side of the screen to the other. So another cool MC10 game from Jim Gary. Thanks, Jim.
What's interesting about that is that's the same title of a Commodore 64 game. It's actually one of my favorite Commodore 64 games. But it's not the same game.
Sure. Just the same name.
Yeah.
Only so many names with space in it, I guess.
Right. You could always substitute a star, I suppose. All right, our next two items are from Richard Kelly, and we've covered these before, but Richard's on a roll here with his making algorithms. let's see, his first one is Retro Rick's maze making algorithm version 4.0. So he's made some speed improvements. Looks like he's changed some color choices to make the mazes more visible. Looks good. He's just continuing to improve on his maze algorithms. And there's also a link in here for a Dragon 32 version. So if you've been following that, or you're looking for a maze generating algorithm for a game or project that you're working on, you should definitely check these out. All right, this next one is from Patrick Pelletier. Introducing Thor BBS, a BBS dedicated to the Tandy TRS-80 color computer. So this is another bulletin board system that you can reach via Telnet from any ANSI terminal. I guess it'll work with, it has an ANSI and an ASCII mode. So he specifically mentions that Twilight Term works, which is a CoCo 3 ANSI terminal program that you could use with any number of ways. A lot of people have Wi-Fi modems, so that lets you Telnet out. There's any number of ways you could do that, or just do it from your modern PC. Just open a terminal or a PuTTY window and Telnet over to the Thor BBS. So it sounds like it's just starting up, and he's working on it, but he's just announcing its availability. So if you're a BBS fan, I know someone on the podcast who might be a BBS fan and actually runs one. You
got some competition now.
That's right.
Check that out. Thanks, Patrick. All right, we have one from Ron Delvaux. Anyone aware the electronic book shows a BBC Acorn using it also?
Sharp Eye or whatever by Ron. But we did a tech segment some time ago on the electronic book. If you don't know, it's a kind of a primitive touchpad almost, but it's in book form, and it registers to the CoCo as a joystick. I guess it's the BBC Pro is actually, he said BBC or Acorn. Acorn was the actual producer. Whatever. The BBC Micro, they have kind of a weird port on the back that's called the analog port or something like that. Amongst its facilities, it has facilities for analog joysticks, which it appears to they use in a very similar fashion to the CoCo joysticks, which I didn't know previously, but it's going to be a bit of a DIY if you want to use your electronic book on the Pro. You're going to have to figure out how to wire up the adapters. I don't think the instructions actually show how that is done. Could be wrong. Still kind of neat. I think it's always cool when you have peripherals that once in a while you find something that actually could be used with more than one machine. I think we did a story once where Henry Rietveld had discovered that the X10 controller may have actually originally been developed to work with Mattel. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the machine yet. But anyway, a different machine. So it's kind of like that. But it was I just thought it was kind of cool. And I still haven't figured out. Well, I mean, I think I could produce a wiring diagram if somebody wants to wire one up. Get the parts, we'll figure it out. Feel free to contact me. I'll point you in the right direction if I can.
At Radio Shack, a full line of quality modems makes getting online easy. Open the door to an electronic village where the latest news, stock prices, and more are at your fingertips. Save time with our AC4 acoustic coupler. It's perfect for travelers and works with any telephone handset, just $119.95. And the Direct Connection Modem 2 is also sale priced this month for just $119.95. Our basic 300 baud modem is under $60. The DCM3 modem offers full duplex data transfer and is affordable for any home computer at just $59.95. Finally, the DC2212 operates at a blazing 1200 baud. Save on long-distance charges by transferring data up to 4 times faster. Choose an affordable Radio Shack modem that fits your needs and never be out of touch again. And they're only available in one place. Radio Shack, the technology store.
Dude, you have to see this.
What is it?
It's the Proto EEPROM CC from Prototech. I can program 2716, 2732, and 2732A EEPROMs.
So my EEPROM burner can do that.
This one has 4K of RAM so you can create and debug your RAM image before you burn your ROM.
Wow.
It's fully powered by the color computer, no wall warts or cords to get tangled. It just plugs into your cartridge slot.
Nice.
You can program the RAM or ROM directly from BASIC or assembly language.
Where can I get one?
It's just $149.95 from Prototech.
That's a bargain.
the Proto EEPROM CC from Prototech, Boulder, Colorado.
Our next link is from Guillaume Major. XRoar Online is now hosted on the Color Computer Archive and works with Safari browsers. We've talked about this before, but it's very cool. You can now go to the Color Computer Archive and you see a game or a program that you like. You can now pop it open immediately in an XRoar emulator and use the program instantly from the archive. So you can kind of see it and use it immediately. And it now works with the Safari browsers for all you Mac fans. So very nice.
That is nice.
Try before you download.
Yeah, make sure you're getting the right thing.
I just played with this. That's pretty cool. Very nice. The next news item is Hockey by good friend of the show, Mr. Jim Gary. This is I thought when I was going to look at this is a YouTube video, that this would be some type of a graphical hockey game on the MC10, but no, it's not. It's actually a port from a 1978 program hockey simulator by David Ahl, and it is purely text only. So it looks like you input various parameters and you face off against a number of other players. It just has this running text screen that keeps adding information about the progress of the game.
Yeah, it's more interesting than you would think. It's like reading a sports commentary, and then jumping in with what you're going to do for the next move. So, it kind of reminds me of, as a kid, those football games with the little tiny records that would randomly tell you what was going to happen during a play.
I don't remember those, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. So, interesting game.
Cool. Good work, Jim. The next news item is a glimpse into the CoCo, shots from my source code listing for Super Bust Out between 1980 and 1981 by Mr. Glen Sogi. This is a Facebook post. Glen was the author of Super Bust Out, and it looks like he found some source code for that game and decided to post a few tantalizing screenshots of the source code on green and white bar line printer paper. It looks like in the comments he's concerned about copyright issues, so he's not posting the entire source code, just some screenshots. Still an interesting piece of CoCo archaeology.
Yeah, I think I'd encourage him to consider sharing it anyway, since the historical value is probably greater than the economic value, at least of the code itself. But it is one of those. Unfortunately, the law is the law to some degree, so there'd be some risk to that. Of course, I mean, it's the big risk is probably getting a cease and desist order, right? So,
Each time you just cease and desist.
Right, exactly. But still kind of cool. It's nice to be able to nicely share it where you could read some of it. Somebody was commenting on one of the comments was like jiggity or something, so just kind of some personality in there.
Yeah. I saw that.
Very cool.
Yep, nice work. The next news item is 0 Hour Blog, Chapter 9, Cage Hoist and Shredder Levels by Nick Marintes. This is an ongoing game development blog by Nick on his upcoming game, 0 Hour. It looks like some interesting screenshots here. Looks like the character in the game is going through various levels in a hoist on this particular set of screens, and looks like there's a shredder. I'm presuming you want to avoid the shredder.
That'd be my guess. Yeah.
Yep,
I mean, it looks nice. Gameplay seems fairly standard for a platform-style game. Should be fun to play when it comes out.
Yep. The next news item is Turbo 9, Pipeline 6809 Master's Thesis Summer Update by Mr. Kevin Phillipson and Michael Rywalt. This is a YouTube video. It's about an hour long. Kevin and Michael are giving an update to their progress in creating a pipelined implementation of the 6809 FPGA. It's very technical. I've seen it. It's fantastic. It's fascinating work. Might not be for everyone because it goes deep into the weeds of what they're doing, but the upshot of this is that the 6809 implementation that they're working on will be in theory, a faster implementation because it is executing multiple instructions, not quite in parallel, but close to it by the way that it stacks the various pipeline stages of what a microprocessor does. This is something that's usually done on RISC-based processors because of the way the instructions are set up, but to do this on a CISC processor like the 6009 is pretty cool. So I've been watching this with great interest.
Yeah, definitely impressive project. I do hope that they'll manage to get into some sort of general use. I don't know if that's practical or not, but I'd love to see it. I don't think you should probably be waiting for a plug-in to replace your 6809 in your CoCo. I'm not convinced it's something to hold out for. It'd be kind of cool if it shows up, and if it does, I'll shut up and probably place an order myself. But still, it's a cool project for sure. Definitely nice to see some serious technical research or whatever go into something that's rooted in a retro processor. It's pretty cool.
An interesting side note, one of the professors that inspired Mike and Kevin's work, Dr. Michael Lynch, who unfortunately passed away, back in the 90s, I actually taught Dr. Lynch at an OS9 microware course that I was teaching. He was a professor at the University of Florida. And so I met their mentor 2 decades ago, and then here I am 20-something years later interfacing with the two guys that are doing the 6009 implementation. It's pretty cool to see that influence wrap around there, so very interesting.
Yeah, very cool.
All right, the next news item is simple solution to connect USB keyboard to VZ200-300 retro computer family. This looks like a USB to keyboard interface. I'm not familiar with the VZ200-300, but...
I mean, the VZ200 is almost like a Z80 version of the CoCo. Strange as that may sound. It has the same video hardware. Oh, that's why I was looking at the news group. But this showed up. I guess among other things, it also uses a keyboard matrix scan, similar to what the CoCo or the MC10 or many other computers did. So with this hardware, the design is available there on GitHub. If somebody wants to build a USB keyboard adapter for the CoCo, I think if you started with this hardware design, you'd probably get a great leap forward just by starting with that, and then you could make a few modifications as appropriate, and be pretty close to done in the first day or whatever. So something to look at, maybe inspire a new project. Very cool. Next item, another Jim Gary creation. Appears to be a French title. I'm going to butcher it with my English mispronunciation. They just say Phases de Lune. Maybe it's de la Luna or Phase Luna or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, Jim's description here, astronomy program by Philippe Esclangon. I'm not sure about that. Trace Magazine, March 1984. Displays the phase of the moon for any date. Port to the MC10 from the TRS-80 Model 1 or 3 Basic. Uses HG6 mode to more closely match graphics of the senior TRS-80. I made some fixes to the program after this video was made to bring the days into proper alignment with the real calendar. So anyway, the moon phase graphics program for the MC10. Is it practical or useful? Well, I guess that depends on what you need to do with it. But pretty cool to look at. Fun, I'm sure, to work on and make whatever adjustments he needed to make to correct the day slippage or whatever. Pretty cool. So again, thank you, Jim. It's always good to see your work continuing out there. Just for the record, I still have some more Jim Gary stuff in the queue for more news items. I just thought we had enough for this month already. So
we're gonna start another podcast just to cover Jim's.
Yeah, Jim Gary podcast. Well, you could probably do that.
Probably could.
Although Jim would probably have to appear as a interviewee on such a podcast. Just hint. Anyway, let's see. Moving on. So here's a little bit of a philosophical question. Fresh paint or patina of ages? That's the antique question. This is from Jenny List at Hapkaday. this is kind of generic to any kind of old item or whatever. But it's just a little bit philosophical discussion of, some people pick up the CoCo and the first thing they want to do is repaint it or do whatever they can cosmetically to it. And they make them look nice and shiny and beautiful. Then I go out and find one in the thrift store covered in dust and turned yellow inside out. And I think, well, that one still works just fine with me. So kind of a matter of perspective. Don't know where you fall on that line. They have a picture in there of an old toaster style Mac that it's two different colors of yellow, which should have had two different types of plastic on it, I guess. Anyway, that sort of looks more like most of my CoCos, and I'm just happy with that myself as long as they turn on when I plug them in. Anyway, take a look, consider the arguments, see where you fall on the line. Okay, we have something from Mr. Chet Simpson. Haven't heard from Chet much in a while, but it's good to see him still in action. It says rotating hypertext text on a 512K Tandy Color Computer 3. A little bit of a graphics demo, a simple demo displaying a rotating text for the Tandy Color Computer 3 with 512K of memory. So about a 1-minute video. So take a look, see what Chet's been up to. It's a cool effect.
Very nice looking.
Something to look at.
It looks great.
Yep, definitely cool. Should be able to move the stuff around that circle. I would say a lot of calculations there. I'll bet there's a lot of pre-calculations there, but very cool.
Right.
Introducing Graphicom, the greatest graphics program to ever be written for the CoCo. All you need is a 64K CoCo or CoCo 2 with floppy disk drive.
I don't want to have to be a computer scientist in order to draw a circle. I want it to be simple, direct.
You control Graphicom with 2 joysticks, or use 1 joystick and a koala pad.
You can zoom in for detail work. You can undo your last mistake.
Featuring rubber band graphics to select, move, and copy.
You can pick up a hunk of your picture, reposition it, and move it all over the screen.
Create stamps, and select from a wide palette of colors. Create animations, reverse video, rotate, and more.
It was like love at first sight.
Save your graphic creations to diskette. Send and receive images over a modem right from inside Graphicom.
I have to say it was quite comfortable.
And Graphicom can print images to more than 20 printers. Available at fine software retailers everywhere for only $29.95. Graphicom, the leader in color computer graphics.
Mr. Turtle, how many megabytes does it take to get a good deal on a CoCo hard drive?
I have no idea. Ask Mr. Owl.
Mr. Owl, how many megabytes does it take to get a good deal on a CoCo hard drive?
Oh, let's find out. 10, 15, 20. Oh, it's 20.
Looking for a hard drive for your color computer? Ask the Owl. Owlware is the leading provider of hard drive systems for color computers, offering 20, 40, and 80 megabyte hard drive systems. Our complete hard drive packages include the hard drive, case with fan, SCSI controller, LR Owl interface, and software, fully assembled and tested. 20 megabytes, just $495. 40 megabytes, just $609. And an amazing 80 megabytes for just $875. All our drives come with a 1-year limited warranty, and parts and labor are covered for 90 days. We've earned our place in the market by providing products you can be proud of. Customer service, quality products, and sound design. For all of your hard and floppy drive needs, remember to ask the Owl. Owlware, located in Mertztown, Pennsylvania.
So this is a weird one.
It is.
From Chris Osborne. It's an Apple II guy. Well, mostly an Apple II guy. I guess he's a retro guy in general. He's produced a multi-format cross-platform floppy. He did it for a 5 1/4-inch floppy day, which I didn't know was a thing. But basically, he's got a single floppy disk that has tracks on it for, the Apple II, the Commodore 64, or is it 128? I don't know. Anyway, Commodore, Apple II, and PET.
I thought it was Atari.
No, Atari. I'm sorry. Yes, it's Commodore, Atari, and Apple II. Pretty neat, pretty impressive if you know much about floppy stuff. I mean, you're talking about different physical, low-level formats amazing that you could even have two different disk drives and read the same disk at all, especially without clobbering each other. Got a pretty lengthy write-up if you're interested, David Ladd or somebody like that. Check it out. And it's an interesting piece of technology for some of the most obsolete technology on the planet, but hey, what are we here for?
That's right.
So it's a shame that there's no CoCo involved here, but pretty cool nonetheless. I mean, you have to figure out a lot of geometry and figure out how to do formatting. I mean, you're basically talking about a disk with multiple formats on the same disk, not just like the directories on a certain sector kind of formats, but this kind of magnetic flux at this point, it means a track marker kind of formats. You know what I mean? Definitely a lot of engineering and a lot of knowledge gone into that one. Is it a good use of time? Well, no, but it's a good retro time, that's for sure. Pretty cool.
For sure.
All right, thank you, Chris. We got an article from Benj Edwards. Benj does a lot of kind of retro write-up of different magazines and such. It's in howtogeek.com. It says, Remembering Radio Shack's Windows competitor, Tandy Deskmate. And I think he's mostly just talking about Deskmate on the Tandy 1000, but definitely some similarities to the Deskmate that was available for the CoCo. I think he actually has the CoCo in a video that's linked
he
at the
mentions
bottom.
the CoCo and the CoCo 3 versions.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And also something interesting he mentions right at the bottom is the WinMate version, which was the last version released on the Tandy Sensation. That's cool.
Very cool.
Get the whole history here.
So for anyone nostalgic for Deskmate, I'm not sure I've heard many people say they were nostalgic for Deskmate. It's kind of the unloved cousin. It was a cool technology back in the day.
Yeah.
Sure did them good for a lot of people. Probably was a makeshift word processor for a lot of students back in the day, would be my guess.
The next news item is Mandelburr by a good friend of the show, Mr. Jim Gary. This is a basic program for the MC10. Doesn't look very long, and it uses pset basic commands to draw Mandelbrot sets, which is pretty impressive given that the resolution of the graphics is very low. But I'm watching the YouTube video, and it's drawing line by line, and you can tell it stops a little bit while it's doing some processing, but it's if you scrub through the video all the way, you can see a fairly symmetrical image.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I'm not one of the people who's ever been really enthralled by Mandelbrot stuff. I know some people are really into it. I know it is an impressive feat to be able to do the the calculations and stuff, especially on the MC10. So very cool piece of work.
The next news item is How Do DACs Work by the Learning Circuit Element 14 presents at YouTube. This is a YouTube video about 8 minutes long that talks about digital analog converters. And it looks like Karen is discussing this. I haven't watched it through its fullness, but based on the comments for the video, it seems like people really like the explanation that she's using.
Yeah, it's a good video.
Yeah, look at some pretty good diagrams and such, and some graphs or whatever. They usually do a pretty good job. So if you're curious about how DACs work, there's one in the CoCo. You probably can apply the learning in both directions. Pretty cool.
Right. Certainly the DAC for the CoCo is the joystick. So, all right. The next news item: audio cassette tape data retrospective by Howell Williams at Hackaday. This is a Hackaday article that talks about, I guess, tape drives and how slow they were. Speaking of what we were just referring to earlier with Commodore, there's a video tied to this that looks like that's on YouTube, and it seems that there's some type of a emulator that's being used here. It talks about emulating a tape drive. So it's like this article details how that is done in a particular instance.
Would provide some meat on the bones, I guess, for discussing the ins and outs of cassette storage, I guess. It's not a super long article, but could be interesting for some. Hope so.
The next news item is Why the IBM PC Used an Intel 8088 by Michael J. Miller at PC Magazine. This is a good article. It goes into the decision by IBM to use the Intel 8088 versus, say, the Motorola 68000. Kind of gives some backstory on why the decision was made. In retrospective, it's no surprise that they chose it, but it also raises questions about what the direction of personal computing would have been had they chose something else.
Yeah, it's kind of that tipping point of 6 months one way or the other. Probably would have been a different choice.
Yeah.
Well, it's tempting to want to jump in your time machine and see if you could influence that. I think somebody wrote some fiction about that in the community. Truth is, it is what it is, and there were economic concerns, and it'd be nice maybe if they weren't all economic concerns, but economics is part of reality, right?
That's it.
So that's what we have.
IBM's there to make money, just like everybody else.
Yep. The final news item is Joust is now available for the CoCo 3 by Mr. Glen Hewlett. This is a blog post. Wow, wow, wow. That's all I can say. This is fantastic
amazing
work.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. A lot of hard work, I'm sure. A lot of crawling through code, Williams game hardware. It would be nice if you could have just somehow relocated it to maybe relinked it a bit and just had it run. But fact is that the video hardware is different in weird ways that you'd have to rewrite a lot of the graphics routines, I'm sure. And then you'd have to do probably some adapting of the MMU, using how you use the MMU in the CoCo 3 to make it look like the ROM switching circuitry on the hardware on the Williams games. And pretty involved project, pretty amazing. I guess he also had to do some work for the sound emulation too, because those games had separate boards for the sound cards, which was a small 6800 based computer, essentially. Probably had to do some translation there too. Pretty amazing.
Yeah,
good job, Glenn.
Fantastic. Looks wonderful and awesome to play with a Gamester.
Yes, I played it with the Gamester on my CoCo 3, and it
makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. I want to touch on a technical point. This is not, there's been talk that this is a transcode, but this is not a transcode. I think a transcode is when you port code from one CPU to the next. This Joust was already written for the 6809. I would call this more of a port. As John indicated, the code is going to work on a 6809. It's just that the hardware around the game itself is different than on a CoCo 3. So I would consider this a port of Joust rather than a transcode.
Yeah, I think port is a more correct term. It's tempting to call it a transcode probably because of his previous Pac-Man project, which I guess was a transcode, and of course the Stockmaster's Donkey Kong project all has some similarities in scope. In terms of scope, it's not an insult to call it a port. It's just
no, not at all. Not at all. It certainly does not minimize the work that was done to make this happen. This is very impressive stuff.
Yeah, just amazing.
Again, very cool, Glenn. Good job. Amazing work. All right. Well, that's the end of our news segment. So why don't we take another little break, and then we'll be back with some feedback.
New from Saguaro Software. Eagle, an enhanced lunar landing simulation for the color computer.
Eagle, you are go for orbital descent. Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Break from orbit and use your skill to land safely on the surface. Dual joysticks control your craft's thrust and attitude. Your flight computer continually displays horizontal and vertical velocities, acceleration values, vertical and horizontal distances to the surface, fuel consumption, and more. At advanced levels, test your mettle by injecting problems such as fuel leaks and display failures. Land and launch the upper stage back into orbit.
We are go for liftoff.
Eagle is as educational as it is fun. 32K color computer with 2 joysticks required. Eagle is just $24.95 on cassette or $29.95 on disc or AMDEC cartridge. Eagle from Saguaro Software. Since 1994, Cloud9 has made cool stuff for your color computer. Now Cloud9 is proud to announce the 2 MB Triad Plus memory expansion board. The Triad Plus works in 2 ways. Purchase just the Triad Plus board to expand your Color Computer 3 from 128K to 512K of RAM. Or add the new Protector Plus MMU to access the full 2 megabytes of static RAM aboard the Triad Plus. And the Protector Plus MMU utilizes full buffering to protect your CPU. Unlike previous 2 megabyte memory expansions for the CoCo 3, the Triad Plus operates seamlessly without the need for special patches, configuration, or workarounds. Games like Donkey Kong Remix and Sierra Adventure games simply work without hassle. And the Triad Plus will reduce your CoCo's power consumption and heat generation. The Triad Plus and Protector Plus MMU, only from the innovative engineering of Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, now it's time for some feedback. Our first item of feedback today is from Mr. Kevin Phillipson. Said, enjoying the podcast. I listen to every episode now. So thank you, Kevin. We're obviously thrilled to cover your work, and definitely glad to have you listening. Hopefully Michael's listening as well. And good to hear from a happy listener, and that's why we do it.
Another satisfied customer.
Exactly. Check is in the mail or something like that. All right, so moving on to another of our news item, people. This item comes from Mr. Glen Hewlett. And Glen sent us some email with a little attachment a couple of weeks ago. That I wanted you guys to get the first copies of my CoCo 3 Joust port to thank you for your podcast and support to the CoCo community. That was very cool, Glenn. I know we've enjoyed trying out your game and playing it. Your game, Joust. Definitely the port is very impressive technically and a lot of fun to play. So very cool. And I know I thank you. I'm sure Boise thanks you. Probably the rest of the crew as well. All right. And then one more. We've got a piece of feedback from Mr. Brian Weasler. Brian is fairly succinct. He says, welcome back, Boise. So I'm sure many of you know Boise was out for a few episodes, tending to his own business. He's been back with us, and certainly glad to have him back. Sounds like Brian's glad to have him back as well.
Thank you, Brian.
Very good. All right, well, so all the feedback we've got for now. So, again, we'll take another little break, and we'll be back with whatever we got left.
You can always find back-to-school value and selection at your local Radio Shack store. Save now on our wide range of popular calculators. Our children's learning calculator is just $10.95. Or how about the solar-powered EC401 calculator? It never needs batteries, and it's on sale now for just $22.95. For older students, the EC499 full scientific calculator features 50 functions for just $34.95. Off to college this fall? Our famous realistic Minimus 7 speakers offer big sound in a small space. They're less than 8 inches high, but deliver up to 40 watts of big, rich sound. On sale for just $39.95 each. And for education and entertainment for the entire family, it's the TRS-80 Color Computer. Learn to write your own programs or choose from a large library of plug-in program packs. The Color Computer comes with 4,000 characters of internal memory, 8 colors, and a built-in RS-232 interface for easy communication ability. The Color Computer is specially priced at just $359. That's $40 off the catalog price. For these back-to-school specials and others, be sure to visit your local Radio Shack store. Radio Shack, a Tandy company.
All right, CoCo Cruisers. Now we're back with a discussion amongst the hosts. So we kicked around various topics. We've got a list that we've been evaluating month to month when see what seems appropriate. And this month we've come upon this question: what is considered as, quote, advancing the state of the art in the community, or of course the CoCo community? And so I think this topic could go a few ways. I don't know if I should put a fence on this one or not, but I'm tempted to put a fence on saying something to the effect of, well, how do we advance the state of the art of the CoCo community without just dropping a whole nother computer in and calling it a CoCo, which seems to be a temptation that we face a lot these days. So I'd prefer to hear about advancing the state-of-the-art in terms of new animation techniques or maybe new sound techniques or whatever. And maybe that's hypocritical too, because a lot of the new sound techniques involve dropping in a new piece of sound hardware, which to me is not the same as replacing the computer, but I can see where you might make an argument that they are the same. I don't know. So I'm not going to put up a fence. We'll just see where it goes. Maybe I'll stand up for it later and say, nope, that's out of bounds. Maybe one of the other hosts will say the same thing. We'll see. But I don't know. I guess I don't really have much else to offer off the top of my head. I mean, advancing state-of-the-art in the community. Certainly, Glen Hewlett has pushed the state-of-the-art in terms of being able to translate and make use of some existing code that's not quite ready for the CoCo, but is sort of related with his Joust port and some of his earlier work. That's definitely a way to advance the state-of-the-art. And we've seen similar projects, not only from Glen, but certainly Stockmaster on this Donkey Kong project, and maybe there's some other stuff that's out there. I'm sure that's not the only way to advance the state-of-the-art. Certainly we've got people contributing to Nitrous 9, pushing the capabilities of that operating system, that sort of thing. And like you said, I mean, there are people doing hardware advancements, putting in graphics cards and that sort of thing to do more. There's a variety of audio sound options, taking different approaches, some with more merit than others perhaps, but I don't want to get too deep into that. Anyway, just wanted to get us warmed up and talking, so I think I've said about all I can say. So who else has something to say on this topic? What is advancing the state-of-the-art in the CoCo community?
Well, I particularly like stuff that was, that could have happened back in the day, right? So period correct stuff. So, such as Glen's porting, the GMC sound card, stuff like that. That's really advancing the art of the state of the art of the community, because it could have happened back then.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of playing into my own prejudices, I guess. But that does warm my heart a little more when I see something that could have been today and just wasn't. There are pieces of hardware that could be added to the machine without changing the machine itself. So I think it's cool to do that. Things that maybe change the kinds of I/O that we could do. I'm not sure what projects I've got in mind, though, that are, or at least that are recent, that really fill that bill.
I can tell you what's not advancing the state of the art is just copying existing projects.
Yeah.
Advancing the state of the art is about finding something novel and new and different and implementing it and working toward it. And it doesn't mean that it can be something as easy as Glen's port. I say easy, something as direct as Glen's port. It can be a software state-of-the-art project like the Joust port. It could be the introduction of new hardware, a new way of doing things. And I think the success, or how you measure the success of advancing the state-of-the-art, is how widely adopted your technique or your work is. So I would say, think of the hardware designs that have come out into the community and have done well in terms of populating themselves in the community, becoming what I would call anchors in the community. Super IDE, CoCoSDC, those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Those are examples of, at the time, state-of-the-art. The GMC, of course, and other sound solutions to some degree, I would say, are. But how entrenched are those software and hardware items and solutions in the community? How well are they being used? And what was state-of-the-art last year or 10 years ago, over time just becomes table stakes at some point, right? So we can talk about things like, for instance, DriveWire. DriveWire was something that was created over 12, 15 years ago. It was state-of-the-art, I would consider then. Now it's just, just one of the other solutions that we have. Same thing with the Super IDE and even the CoCoSDC. So I think we should all be pushing for the state-of-the-art and looking for new things to bring to the community that way. So that's my definition.
I think that's a good point on the discussion there is, do people actually use the technology or whatever? If you went off and created a model rocket launcher for your CoCo, which you certainly could do, it might be very interesting, it might be very novel, but it's probably not something that the average CoCo users are going to have or use or do anything with. So in that case, that probably is not advancing the state of the art, even though you might be having a lot of fun writing countdown timers for your CoCo or whatever. So yeah, a certain amount of how much general usage does your project or your technology or whatever, how much does that get?
Right. How much utility does it bring to the community?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would be so limited as you said, but I like what you said, Boise, that it should bring some kind of new functionality, something that hasn't been done before. Even if that project itself, well, let's say you did the rocket launcher, or I'm thinking of the project to convert modern iCal calendar format to work, that the sometimes even if that technology itself isn't directly beneficial, it can spark something or be the basis for something else that is more adopted. It might just be a step in an evolution. I tend to agree with you. I don't want something that completely changes the color computer to be something else. But, you look at the stuff that we even talked about today where Brendan Donahue with the CoCo VGA, I mean, that's definitely something that changes the internals without actually making it feel like it's not a CoCo anymore.
Right.
It's got like backward compatibility, and it definitely adds a lot of cool functionality and features. I would definitely say there's a lot of people who have CoCo VGA.
Yep.
And we have seen CoCo VGA as a game platform for not a huge number of games, but a few. It's pretty, it's useful and has some specific applicability. It's pretty cool.
Sure. Yeah. But I agree. It doesn't have to be hardware. There's a lot that can be software. And in fact, that's where we always complain about the community. That's where we're hurting, is we've got a glut of different new hardware options, but without any software to take advantage of it, how much is it going to catch on, right?
Right.
What's the push for that? But I think it's sometimes it's taking a risk and doing something that hasn't been done before that's the most beneficial to the community in the long run.
Yeah, I want to throw another example. I don't know if it can be called state of the art, but it's certainly impressive. Is this past weekend, Mike and I at PCF Southeast saw Henry Strickland's Python interpreter for the CoCo running under OS 9 or Nitrous 9. To me, that is I like the mixing of the old and the new. Right, Python's very much you consider compared to the CoCo a new language. So there is some utility in that, and that is pushing, I think, the state of the art in language usage on the color computer by integrating a language like Python with OS 9. That's another example of software state of the art type of activity.
Yeah, right, definitely cool to bring a modern language into the scope of the CoCo. I would like to see more of that. Even better if it was somehow, and I don't know what it would take for this to happen, but if suddenly somebody brought out Python or Ruby or whatever, and suddenly everybody was programming in it, that'd be awesome. I don't know what language you'd have to pick to get that to happen. Years ago, there was talk of Java, which has sort of happened. You can get Java on the 6809 in a form, but it doesn't encompass all of the libraries, and certainly not internet access and all that. So nobody really ever bothered to put Java programs on, or write Java programs for the CoCo. But it'd be neat if they did.
Yeah. I mean, if that I don't know if you'd call that state of the art. That would be an interesting showcase.
Yeah.
But is it practical? It'd be kind of a thick layer of code. We're talking about a Java virtual machine running on the 1609, but
well, it might be a fine line. Things that are, I mean, if I wanted to make a big stink or case or whatever, I could say, well, I brought us digital video to the CoCo, And I guess one or two people have followed on with their own digital video players, but realistically, it's none of it's very practical. but it did sort of push the capabilities, or experimented with pushing the capabilities. And if we did have something that we could really thought that CoCo was going to benefit from some full motion video in a game, well, I know how to get us there.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be practical either. I mean, as far as peripherals go, it's kind of, go crazy. Put anything as advanced on it. I mean, would it be practical? No, it's never going to be practical. But if I could just plug my USB flatbed scanner in and pull graphics directly into CoCo Max 3 or something, that would be cool, and I would probably use it for something. It would be useful to me, but that would definitely be a new functionality that isn't there today.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Are we trying to impress each other, or are we trying to impress ourselves? And then maybe there's two different standards to live by there.
Yeah. That's true.
Well, I'm afraid this one's probably going to end up as coming to a draw here, with a largely dead horse in the middle.
It's totally subjective, like so many other things, right?
Yeah. Well, some of these things are worth talking about, and maybe somebody did get a clear picture of what the state of the art is, or how to push the state of the art a little further. And if so, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear about what you've done. I mean, we'd love to hear more from Henry Strickland. We'll see. But anyway, some of that's going to have to wait till episode 76 and beyond, because it's not going to make this one. Well, I think I'm going to have to draw this to a close. Stay tuned. Listen to our commercial break, or not quite commercial, but our non-commercial break. We'll see what Neil's doing this month. And so stay tuned. CoCo forever.
All you've wanted in a computer and more. The TDP System 100, a complete system ready to plug into your color TV set. It features 16K of memory, expandable to 32K at any TDP service center nationwide, and expand from 32 to 64K through Southco, the Georgia distributor. Raised keyboard with gold contacts. Standard basic built-in from Microsoft. RS-232 interface device built right in. RF interface for direct hookup to any TV built in. Programming manuals included at no charge. Bust-out game pack included at no charge. Joysticks included at no charge. The suggested retail price is only $379 from Southco Sales Corporation.
Hello, CoCo Cruisers. This is John Linville here with this month's approximation of a tech segment. Got a little behind the eight ball on this one. Kind of winging it here. Don't have this fully neat with a neat bow on it like I would usually like to. So we're just going to talk about a little bit of an issue that popped up I thought was interesting. I thought it might be fun to expound upon it. I don't really have any big solutions, and it may just raise more questions. But this is a hobby. If you've ever been to CoCo Fest or somewhere, imagine some old guys sitting around talking about nothing, and that's sort of where we're going. So let's get started. I want to talk about some of the issues involved with using the CoCoSDC. That's the CoCo floppy drive emulator that accesses SD cards. That's become extremely popular in the CoCo community over the past few years. I want to talk about using the CoCoSDC with actual floppy hardware, which is obviously something you might want to do, at least initially, to transfer all the stuff off your old floppies, if you have any, into something that can be put on your SD card. And in particular, I want to talk about doing this, well, not specifically how to do it, but some of the issues involved with doing it on a Dragon. Like I said, I became aware of this poking around in the Dragon archive, Wordle Dragon, archive.wordle Dragon, I think is what it is. Yeah, there we go. To appreciate all the issues in this topic, if you don't already know them, It might be worth reviewing the tech segments from our earlier episodes, number 17 and number 41. Kind of weird that they were so spread out, but that's just sort of the way it was. Anyway, the issue comes up that it's difficult, or a non-obvious reason why it's difficult to use the floppy drive controller on the Dragon with the CoCoSDC at the same time. So I'm going to go through some of that. So let's see. Of course, the CoCoSDC fundamentally is a floppy drive controller emulator, or whatever other term you might like or prefer over emulator, but that's what it is. And so it plugs in place and it acts like it's a floppy drive controller. It just doesn't actually normally doesn't access floppy drives. Right off the top, it's a bit of an issue because to emulate the hardware, you have to use the same hardware addresses. So that's an automatic conflict if you somehow plug them both into a Y cable. The CoCoSDC, of course, can be configured to emulate a Dragon floppy drive controller as opposed to a CoCo floppy drive controller. And if you're using that on a Dragon, then that's a reasonable thing to do, but you're going to need to supply a Dragon-compatible DOS, which is an extension available for that, available through the courtesy of Triad over on the World of Dragon archive. Anyway, if you dig in there, you might find the source of this discussion. You might even find an answer that I haven't actually found yet, but keep looking. See, there'll be plenty of stuff to learn. So anyway, what you might not know is the Dragon DOS addressing for their floppy drive controller is similar but not exactly the same as the way the addressing is done for the CoCo floppy drive controller. And so you might think, well, hey, just flip it over to Dragon addressing and go from there. Well, it's it's gold star for the idea, but it's a little more complicated than that. Yeah, I mean, they are a similar range. The addressing is different, but fairly similar. Basically take half of the IO address range and swap them around the middle. They still end up putting the ROM image at the same place, so right there you're losing. It's not going to work. So an obvious point to start here for CoCo users, of course, is to use the multi-pack interface. And which you can do, but I mean, if you plug them both in at the same time, that's not going to help you much because, again, they do address sort of over top of each other. You have an automatic conflict, but you can use the individual slot mapping selections in the multi-pack interface, and so you can remap the IO range so that you could in software you can make the IO range point to the floppy drive controller instead of the SDC long enough to do whatever you want to do with the floppy drive controller, and then switch back for whatever other drive access you want to do. It's a little more complicated than that when the rubber hits the road, but that's basically the way it's done. Turns out SDC DOS, that comes for the CoCoSDC, seems to already know how to do this. Looking at the manual that I think Rick Adams put together for CoCoSDC, there's some instructions in there how to do that for CoCo. So pretty much a solved problem. You just have to find the right set of directions if you want to use the floppy drive controller with the CoCoSDC on a CoCo. I think probably this is something that you could do by hand with manual MPI pokes if you somehow had the right software available and a way to execute the pokes. If you had some software that knew how to drive the floppy drive controller on its own, without using the onboard ROM or anything, you could probably do this. Again, you'd have to have some way to enter the pokes, to switch the ROMs, to switch the MPI slot selections, but yeah, I think you could do it. But again, you need you need some sort of software that at least knows how to access the floppy drive controller directly, and some way to switch the ROMs. Again, the SDC DOS seems to know how to do that as long as you use the drive on and off commands correctly. It seems to be smart enough to figure this out, but your mileage may vary. I haven't actually done it, but it looks like the directions are there. So if you have trouble, let me know, but I'll try to see what I can do to help. Anyway, so worth noting, the Tandy multi-pack interface and its its clones or whatever, like the slot pack or whatever. You can remap the slots. There's two different kind of decodes in the CoCo cartridge ROM. One called CTS, or Cartridge Select, which is really for selecting the ROM that normally gets mapped in at C000. And then there's SCS, or Spare Cartridge Select, which is really for I/O stuff, and it's really for selecting the FTC hardware that gets mapped in at FF40. But the MPI can remap those two different selects separately. And so, I mean, that can be pretty handy, and that's sort of what enables this stuff to work on the CoCo with the MPI. One thing to note that makes this possible, the CoCo floppy drive controller, for its data pump loop that is heavily synchronized, high-performance loop that's used for reading sectors of data and writing sectors of data with the CoCo FTC. That depends on use of the halt line. That's a part of the slot. And the halt line does not get switched. It goes equally or in parallel to all of the slots on the MPI. And so, if you have a CoCo floppy drive controller plugged into any of the slots of the MPI, so long as you've got your CTS and SCS bits set appropriately for what you're actually doing, or what your software running needs to know, halt will still work and your floppy drive controller will work. So there you go. But moving on, so there was no Dragon MPI, no multi-pack interface from Dragon. Certainly not the same thing. It sounds like there may have been something similar. I've kind of seen some references to it, a race or something like that. Don't know a lot about it. Yeah, race, RACE. So apparently there's something that's similar to an MPI. I don't know how it works and how it differs, whatever. If you know, feel free to send me a note or email or whatever. I'd love to learn more. But anyway, if you have a Dragon and you happen to have a Tandy multi-pack interface, they will plug together and generally will work for most applications, or at least the ones that work the way they would work on a CoCo. But that's not totally going to be helpful for running in a floppy drive controller in a different slot. So, particulars, the cart line, that's the interrupt line, the coming from the slot, it is switched on the multi-pack interface by the same signal that switches the CTS and Cartridge Select. So the cart line is going to follow the ROM mapping. And so this kind of makes sense on the CoCo because we use on CoCo, you use the cart line for auto start ROMs, which was I guess a bigger thing for the CoCo. When the cartridge is plugged in, they're actually wired so that the clock goes back to the cart interrupt line. And when the card is seen by the CoCo, it recognizes it and auto starts the game in the slot. So it kind of makes sense the cart gets switched with CTS, even though it's sort of in the fine print, I guess. But the Dragon floppy drive controller does things a little bit different than the CoCo floppy drive controller. The Dragon floppy drive controller uses the cart line as an interrupt, which it uses during that highly synchronized, high-performance data pump loop that it uses for reading and writing to sectors on a floppy disk. So, if you try to use a Tandy MPI with a Dragon and a floppy drive controller in the MPI, then you're going to have both the CTS, that's the ROM signal, normally the ROM signal, but in this case it's the cart line signal, as well. And then the SCS, that's normally the Dragon, the hardware I/O lines, the SCS, is going to have to map, they're both going to have to map to the same slot, which is fine if you just want to switch the whole slot at a time, so to speak. But if you want to do something in software and have multiple carts running together, especially in similar carts like the STC and the CoCoSDC and the floppy drive controller, that's not going to work really well. So the net of it is that if you want to enable the floppy drive controller, you're going to have to map in the ROM image that comes on the floppy drive controller. So if you're running the code out of the ROM that's on the CoCoSDC, and you flip over to the ROM that's on a different card, the floppy drive controller or anything else for that matter, you're probably going to get a crash. Almost certainly is basically what I mean by probably there. Or even if it does somehow not crash, you're going to get an awful mess. So where does that leave us? You may be able to pull this off if somehow if you're writing code that's aware of this as a possibility, similar to the way that obviously the SDC DOS was written for the CoCo, then you could be running code elsewhere and not have to switch out. So you could be running something from RAM. It's basically what it would have to be, or maybe you have some sort of special extended color basic or whatever, Dragon basic burn or whatever that somehow takes care of things. I don't know, it seems pretty impractical, but you might could load up something in RAM and be running from there. So rather than having like the normal DOS style, you might have some kind of special utility that could switch between the floppy drives and the CoCoSDC while running from RAM. I don't know if that's practical or whatever, but it might be a nice project. Depends on how much you need it, I guess. So I'm kind of getting to the end of my thing here. So if you've got other options or information, I guess this is where I'm going to ask. Like I said, this is not a real well-polished presentation this time. I'm kind of getting close to the end of the month. But I'm going to ask the audience, so have Dragon folks solved this? Do you have a solution here? I looked around under the DOS Plus extender for DriveWire and CoCoSDC thread on World of Dragon, archive.worldofdragon.org. It's pretty thick and a lot of information, whatever, but I didn't quite see easy to do this kind of answer. So is this resolved? It sounds like maybe some people are doing this, and basically they've just got the same ROM image loaded both on their floppy drive controller and on the CoCoSDC. So when it swaps from one to the other, you're still running the same ROM image, and it survives. And so maybe pairs the DOS extender there is kind of like CoCoSDC, where it's smart enough to deal with this. It also saw some references to something like an MPI, but called a race or something. I don't know what that is. I'd love to know more. Somebody point me at it. Thank you. If you got one for sale, I might be entertained by that as well. So have you guys solved this? Is there a general solution? What else could you do? And again, you could run from RAM perhaps. Maybe if you are doing the D60, the Dragon 64 thing where it you put in the 64K mode and it remaps some stuff. Does that help? Does that change things? I don't know. Are there any other workarounds that allow you to use this the Dragon floppy drive controller and the CoCoSDC in Dragon mode there on a Dragon? Is there anything else that makes them work together nicely? Is there a set of simple instructions or relatively simple instructions? Maybe there is. I am not a total expert on the Dragon, I'll admit that. But I would love to hear more from somebody who is, and let us know where some of that is. If you want to take over the tech segment for a month, certainly be happy for you to do so, whether you're name is Kieran or Stuart or, whoever else might might want to take over, I'd certainly love to hear from you. So I thought that was a neat little situation, a neat little conundrum. How do you make the floppy drive controller work with the CoCoSDC running on a Dragon? So it's kind of a solved problem for running with the floppy drive controller and CoCoSDC on the CoCo, and I think that's reasonably well documented. But it sounds like it's not quite a solved problem, or not at least universally a solved problem on the Dragon. So if you know more about what's going on, how to do it, what people are doing, what sort of compromises they have to make, or whatever, or maybe I'm an idiot and just don't know that it really is easy, let me know. I'd love to hear more. All right, well, you can only be young once, but you can be retro forever. You can be CoCo forever. You can even be Dragon forever. So just let's all get back into this mood and do some of this retro Dragon CoCo stuff together forever. All right, thanks. Be good.
This month in CoCo history.
Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we go back 38 years to the August 1983 issue of the Rainbow magazine and an ad that got gamers excited. On page 161 of that issue is a full-page ad for the double-stick interface from Spectrum Projects. The double-stick interface electronically adapted the famous four-way stick single-button Atari joysticks for gaming on the color computer. The rectangular black box featured two 9-pin male ports that accepted Atari-style joysticks, two 5-pin DIN connectors extended from the back to plug into the left and right joystick ports of the CoCo. The listed price in the ad shows $19.95 for the interface, or $39.95 for the interface and two Atari joysticks. With those prices, it's not surprising that Bob Rosen claimed that the interface was, quote, breaking all sales records, end quote. This ad aged quite well when you consider that 38 years later, a good joystick interface is still in demand for CoCo gamers today.
And that's this month in CoCo history.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 75 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. This month I've got a real treat. I'll be reviewing an original arcade game called Joust. It was just recently ported over to the Color Computer 3 by a Canadian fellow named Glen Hewlett. My first impressions playing this game, I was blown away seeing it run in full arcade original glory on my CoCo 3. After spending a few hours really getting into it and trying to beat my high score, it just gets even better. Absolutely super smooth gameplay with zero lag, and that's even on the later levels when there's a lot more enemies on the screen at once. For those of you who have never played Joust, it is an original arcade game released back in 1982 by a company called Williams Electronics. Joust has been ported to numerous home computers and video game consoles over the years. However, what makes the CoCo 3 version shine is that it's an original transcode port of the arcade game, meaning it's authentic as it looks and plays identical to the real arcade version. Nothing has been cut out or sacrificed. The object of Joust is to defeat groups of knights riding on buzzards. Each level is called a wave. To defeat each enemy knight, you must collide into them. The higher of two jousting lances is the winner. If you collide of an equal height, you repel apart from the enemy. A defeated enemy turns into an egg. If you do not collect this egg in time for points, it'll eventually hatch back into a knight that needs to be re-defeated. As each wave goes on, the game throws more challenges your way, such as the bottom of the screen opens up and has hot lava, which you cannot land in, so walking across the bottom of the screen is no longer an option. Your player controls a yellow knight riding a flying ostrich. Your joystick controls horizontal direction, and the fire button controls the flap on the ostrich's wings. Sounds easy, but there's definitely a strategy. The rate at how fast you flap the wings will cause your ostrich to fly upward, hover, or slowly descend. Moving your character will wrap around the screen from one side to the other. This can be helpful running away or sneaking up on an enemy. Glen has done a fantastic job at transcoding this game to the CoCo 3. He has included a config program on the floppy disk image. You can configure the game to use joystick or keyboard, RGB or composite display type, difficulty level, and other options. He also included a save program to save your high scores and other game settings. To use this feature when you're done playing, don't just reset or power off your CoCo 3. Press the break key and run a program called Save. It'll quickly save your scores and tell you it's now safe to turn off your CoCo. As per our host discussion this month on what is considered as advancing the state of the art in the community, this definitely does. Glen's transcode port of Joust to the CoCo 3 is definitely state of the art. Please, by all means, do yourself a favor and give this game a try, even if you are not into video games, just to see how smooth this runs. You can obtain a copy of it on the CoCo Archives website or on Glen's personal webpage, which you can find in the show notes news section on our podcast webpage. Glen's website has a lot of detailed information if you are into the technical side on how he created this incredible port. What amazes me is this game could have been created back in the day. All it requires is a CoCo 3 with 512K memory, something that was definitely available back when the CoCo 3 was new. And I have to give a little plug here. This game runs extremely well on the Gamester joystick. Just saying. Well, what are you waiting for? Hey, got your Joust CoCo 3 game yet?
Hometown Radio Shack.
Hi, I'm really enjoying playing games at the arcade. I was wondering if you had any arcade-style game controllers for the color computer.
Well, we do sell joysticks for the CoCo.
Can you describe them?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have a plastic joystick, and there's a small push button on the side.
Do they have spring return?
Well, we also sell the deluxe joystick. It has spring return.
What's it like?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have a plastic joystick, and there's a little push button on the side and one on the top. But we do sell some other brands, too.
What are they like?
Well, they're plastic, fit in the palm of your hand. They have plastic joystick, and there's little push buttons on the sides.
Why play games with fragile, outdated plastic controllers? Move up to professional arcade quality with the Gamester. The Gamester is the ultimate 2-button joystick controller for your color computer, Dragon or Tandy 1000. It features a genuine arcade quality joystick with 2 large arcade quality cherry switch buttons on a single surface. It sits comfortably on your lap or on your desk. Select custom furniture quality paint or stain finishes. Choose a right or left-handed configuration. And now you have the option of light up LED buttons. Find out why so many others are delighted with the Gamester. To build yours, simply reach out to Neil Blanchard by email. Neil@CoCoCrew.org. That's NEIL@CoCoCrew.org. For true arcade action, it's the Gamester.
Well, it's that time again. We have reached the end of the podcast. We hope you enjoyed episode 75. As usual, I'd like to thank our host, John Linville, for procuring all the news articles and providing informative text segments. Mike Rowan for painstakingly editing the podcast and creating those fun commercials. Boise Pete, our CoCo historian. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Last but not least, a huge thanks to all of you who listen and support us each month. Keep your feedback coming in, because we really do like hearing from you. Until next month, happy CoCoing and retro forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo. 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 CoCo.
Dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway?
It's a blast from the past.
Dance, dance, dance. Dance, dance, dance.
CoCo.